Your destination is on the right.
Austin Cliff here for Creme Dementia YouTube. Just a quick fit check. And I think we're about ready to go. It's Friday night. It's Pawpaw Festival, baby. Ohio.
Okay, so pawpaws in permaculture. I guess I was always fond of pawpaws because they're a native plant. And one of the ways that I really took advantage of those annonaceous acetogenins was I used grazing animals to help me manage my pawpaws. So deer, goats. So I had a herd of goats, and we milked the goats. We made goat cheese, but we would use our goats to eat things like multiflora rose, the grasses, whatever. Pawpaws are fly pollinated, so having animals around, you have manure and you have more flies. That also helps fertilize the soil. So that silvopastoralism is sort of what I think is a great way to manage your pawpaws. When I first started, I was going out, because people see pawpaws in the woods, and I sent that little brochure around, and they're like, I don't get any fruit, or I only get a couple. And then there's all these people growing pawpaws in orchards. So I guess what I was doing was like sort of a blend of those things. And then along the way, I would go to people's properties, people with horses or cows, and then I went to these people with goats. And like all that was left in their pasture were pawpaw trees. And I was like, well, that's pretty amazing. So I had actually been working on a dairy farm with cows. And when the trees are big, cows are fine. But when the trees are small, cows could kind of just step on them, and then you're like, ah. So goats are a little more tiptoey. But goats can do things like rub their heads on them. So it's not like a perfect system, but it does pretty good when it comes to things like goats eat the multiflora rose, which is very prickly, and if you're trying to pick pawpaws and they're full of multiflora rose, that pretty much sucks. So that's my main example of pawpaws and permaculture is utilizing that animals thing, and that's because of those annonaceous acetogenins. So. Nope. Deer don't eat them. So, they'll eat. The deer will eat a little bit. They're not huge eaters. They might take a bite. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the North American pawpaw growers will have different varieties. I have varieties, but I'm also very supportive of the biodiversity in our area. Back in 1916, the American Genetic Association had this competition for the best pawpaws. And pawpaws are native to 26 states east of the Mississippi. And people were sending them in from like Michigan to Louisiana. And 5 out of the top 10 best pawpaws came from Southern Ohio. So for whatever reason, I think we're blessed with pawpaws here. I think people who sell varieties tend to have this mindset that you gotta have a cultivar. But me personally, I'm not inclined to say that. I think that's an option. You're gonna get a variety that is standard. Do we want to go down the same path of all the other fruits and limit our biodiversity? I don't think that's great. I think we should be open to all these different varieties. We have an unlimited potential of varieties. Anytime you plant a seed, you have a potential new variety. So you could, do cross-pollination of different ones that you like and keep breeding new ones. So I sort of resist the idea that you have to have these cultivars. That's where I'm at. If you want to come over and taste these wild pawpaws, I would like you to come over to our booth and try them. We're over at Integration Acres over there. And, in Asian countries, wild fruit is more highly valued. So I think it's up to you to decide how you want to go on your pawpaw journey. So, yes, sir. So when I first started, I had set this line. It's called, pawpaws are higher than, compared to apples, bananas, and oranges. They're higher in niacin, calcium, phosphorus, manganese, magnesium, iron, copper, zinc, protein, fat, 7 of the 11 essential amino acids, okay? I was like, super fruit, love it, no bugs, native, it's amazing. Okay, but then this guy, Dr. Brannon, who's not here right now, he's a scientist, looking at these details, I guess originally when they had done the nutritional study, they had included the skins, okay? Most people don't eat the skins. I don't eat the skins. We don't really promote eating the skins. So he redid the study, and it was not as high in all those things. So I don't have this thing in my brain where I can say, but basically it's got some fat, it's got some proteins. I'm sure there's going to be more discussions about nutrition. I think they're still nutritious. They're maybe not as nutritious as some of the stuff. Yes, sir. Yes, they're in the Annanaceae family, which is the custard apple family, and the pawpaws the only member.
That doesn't give you the run.
Well, oh yeah, if you eat too much pawpaw, it may make you poo-poo. You've heard. The custard apple family, is mostly a tropical fruits, so the pawpaw is kind of special. And they've talked about the sloths back of 30,000 years ago, I guess, that maybe transported and were eating the fruit and pooping. These groundhogs are a lot like sloths, but they're just smaller and they're cute. They taste good too. All right. Yes. Okay. His question is about flavors and the drought with the pawpaws. And one of the things I guess I learned years ago about the drought was they tend to, the trees tend to let their fruit go sooner. Sooner, and then maybe all at once. So I had trees, it really does depend on where the trees are growing, in my opinion. I mean, we get fruit from a lot of different microclimates. I have an orchard on a hillside, and I had trees that they were dropping their fruit, and they were kind of hard, and they didn't really feel ripe yet. I think those trees were kind of stressed out. I think in general, even with wine grape growers, the fruits are higher sugar content in drought years. But if we're getting fruit from along rivers and places where they have access to water, I haven't sensed a whole lot of difference in flavors. Yes, another.
What are all the anonas you had?
What I've only really had the soursop and the custard apple and a pawpaw, so it's pretty inexperienced about
Try
it.
the Rowinia.
Oh, which one?
Rowinia.
Rowinia?
Rowinia.
Rowinia.
Anona muscosa.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? I mean, yes. Yeah, so pruning is something that people who are growing them in orchards tend to do. They have a big central leader, and if you want to keep your trees short, you want to cut out that central leader so it's easier to get fruit. Now, I brought my pawpaw picker. This is like a little Appalachian invention I made. And you can't use an apple picker because when you run into those big clusters, and they got 7 fruit, you're like, oh, and you get your apple picker up there and half of them fall out, So I came up with this. It's pretty simple, just some, kind of soft stuff and some duct tape and some little fingers here. And this is if I was going to try to ship a pawpaw to somebody, I would use something like this. Because if I'm processing pawpaws, I like them when they fall from the tree and they're ripe. If I'm getting them from I'm going to try to ship them to somebody, you can't ship them a ripe pawpaw because by the time it gets there, it's like a puddle of goo. So there's a little bit of a science of when they're ripe. And they, it's crazy, but these little fingers, they kind of do the job. Like, it's not that much pressure, and if they come off naturally, they're ripe enough that you can ship them. If they don't come off, then they're not ready yet. And you know, on a pawpaw tree, they don't all get ripe at once. I don't really promote shaking the tree. I mean, who shakes trees? Come on, I know you're doing it. You know, because you're gonna get a fair amount of them, but you know, it depends on what you're doing. Now, like me personally, when we're processing fruit, I really just want the soft ones. Like, otherwise I have to sort them and then try to ripen them, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. So I like to get people to bring them to me when they're ripe, so we can process them. If you're out there shaking the trees, especially when there's money involved, people tend to get a little greedy and they're like, "Hey, shaking that tree, get those pawpaws down." So, yeah, by the way, so when we started, they were worth 50 cents a pound, and you know, now I pay $3 a pound for wild ones. And you know, people are making some pretty good money this year because there's a lot of fruit, and you know, I've written some big checks, but that's how we make this stuff happen. So, and it's part of, like, I would say, sustainable entrepreneurship or something. You know, trying to work with our natural biodiversity and create a little economic activity down here in Appalachia. Yes, sir. Okay, the question is about if you get a pawpaw to fall, like, kind of maybe through a wind, or a lot of times it's like a raccoon or a possum or somebody's knocking them out of the trees. There's some fine lines between when they will ripen and taste good or not. I don't have a pawpaw on me. Does anyone have a pawpaw on them? Okay, there's a stem. Where the stem hits the fruit is where they ripen first. Yes. So if it breaks off and it's hard and white, it tends not. That's a signal that it's probably not going to do great. If it naturally falls off that part, you're in good shape. I mean, they may ripen, but they may not taste as wonderful. It's kind of like your vine ripened tomato. You know what I mean? If you pick it early, you know, maybe the flavor's a little less as good. So, yes. Okay, so the question's about cooking pawpaws and bitterness. You know, I think it tends to do pretty well with like dairy products. I don't know if that helps kind of like mellow out some of the bitterness, but like, say, cheesecake. You know, ice cream is one of the big popular things, and I don't think when you eat pawpaw ice cream, I don't hear people saying it tastes bitter. But so things like cheesecake, creme brulee, you know, something where there's like a good dairy base seems to help. And I think when you're starting to do the baking stuff, you got to watch that annonaceous stuff too. I really think the pawpaw industry needs to do some more research on that. And that's one of the cool things about pawpaws now is, like, it's a great opportunity for grad students and professors to do all kinds of research. So, yes, sir. Can we dig up pawpaws and transplant them from the wild, I'm assuming? Anywhere. I mean, like, I tend to do that in the spring, me personally. Yeah, like right when they're starting to leaf out. Obviously, you know, a lot of that has to do with the rain, you know, things staying watered. I mean, I've had pretty good luck with about knee high. I haven't really tried bigger ones. Yeah. There's a guy here, Tom Ripening. He sells really big trees that he digs. You might go talk to Tom. I guess I like to promote growing from seed. Yeah. Yep.
You could try to dig up clones.
What's that?
You could try to dig up clones.
Yeah, and I think if you cut around them in the fall and then dig them out in the spring, that's a good way to do it. So one other thing I wanted to talk about was sort of extreme weather events, and we've had a lot of heavy-duty rain at times. You know, like you've been hearing about these 100-year floods. even 1,000-year floods. So a couple of years ago, we had some really, really wet springs, and pawpaws don't like to have their roots submerged in water for very long. It creates a lot of stress for them. And then when that stress happens, I guess they start to create ethanol, which is alcohol. And that attracts these non-native beetles that are here from Asia, which there's different species of them, but they call this whole kind of group, they call them ambrosia beetles. So these beetles, they have this fungus, and it lives in their, like on their body, and they eat the fungus, and that's the ambrosia. So when the trees are stressed, that says they want to attack these trees. The ethanol, I think it has something to do with their fungus taking over and being the strong fungus. So even though pawpaws are native and they've been grown here for a long time, we have had a lot of some tree mortality here in the last, like 7 or 8 years, I think triggered by these extreme rain events and these ambrosia beetles. So a lot of those trees that I used to go to in Bessie's backyard and Esther's backyard, those all died. So kind of sucks. Our orchard, we lost about a half of our orchard. It really has taught me a lot about the soil types that you're growing your pawpaws in. The pawpaws in the sandy soil that's well drained, they don't have those problems. So if you're planting your pawpaws and you've got clay soil, I would suggest you dig a big hole and you put some sand, some pea gravel in those holes to help with drainage if we have these rain events, which it seems like we're going to keep having those. So, yes. I guess that's a question about how much time and energy you want to put into that tree, but you only really get one chance to plant that tree. So I'm thinking about replanting some trees, and I'm thinking, because a friend of mine has a vineyard, and he put drainage underneath the trees. So like where my soils are, like there's some sandy soil and then there's like clay on the bottom. So I was thinking about, I'm going to probably put in some drainage. So I'm not sure 100%, but I'm thinking like 3 or 4 feet deep. That's what I'm thinking, but I don't know yet. I'm still researching that. Does anybody want to go walk around and go see these wild pawpaws? Because there literally are like thousands of pawpaw trees around this lake. But usually there's fruit still here at the festival. There's probably not going to be any fruit. Just letting you know. But we'll be able to talk about what other trees it likes to grow with, at least around here. Things like black walnuts. Animals don't eat black walnut trees either, like goats and cows and horses. So it's another one of those silvopastoralism opportunities. Black locusts are nitrogen fixing. I like to keep my black locusts in with my pawpaws. They kind of do that dappled shade. And then they're fixing nitrogen. And then things like, we have non-native invasives, going crazy, like autumn olive, multiflora, high bush cranberry, all kinds of that kind of stuff. So we're gonna go and wander around there, and that's it. Unless anybody else has anything else to say, except thank you for being here.
Right next to the Pawpaw tent is the NAPGA tent, and that's where I'll be spending most of my weekend, answering your questions about pawpaws to the best of my ability with my pawpaw brethren. Here is NAPGA President Dano's method for planting pawpaws. The idea is to cut the bottom of the container off as you plant it, place it into the hole, and then pull the sleeve of the container remaining off to preserve the root ball. Then shade the trees while they're young. One thing I haven't really featured in my previous videos is the zebra swallowtail butterfly. The pawpaw is the sole host plant for the zebra swallowtail butterfly, And Alina has a great display on the butterflies at the NAPGA tent this year.
You know, let's preserve the pawpaw. I'm going to bring some pawpaw back to Buffalo myself.
Solar lights. Solar induction cooktop.
Yes, somehow.
And it's a good thing we brought the electric cooktop as well, as no open flames are allowed at the festival due to the stage 3 drought.